Are you treating the symptom, or are you actually addressing the underlying problem? I'm Todd Goodwin, and that's what I want to discuss today, is that it's important to realize that whatever challenge you're facing, especially if it's a health-related issue or an emotional issue, are you dealing with the real underlying problem that's causing those symptoms, or are you just treating symptoms? We live in a society based on symptomology. It's much easier and really much more profitable for drug companies, providers of certain services, and so forth, to just sell us a treatment. For instance, someone who has high blood pressure may take a pill when in fact most people with high blood pressure would be able to restore a healthy cardiovascular system if they ate healthier, exercised, and lost some weight. But it's much easier to take a pill. Someone with heartburn can just take an antacid and continue to eat the same disgusting, unhealthy food that they're eating that might be causing that acid reflux in the beginning. So just take a pill instead of treating the issue. And more close to home in the work that I do as a hypnotist is dealing with things like anxiety or overeating. So let me give you an example of the difference between a symptom and a cause. For years, I've seen people who have come to me and they have a weight issue. And they say, my problem is I'm overweight. And I say, well, why are you overweight? And they might say, well, the real issue is that I am an emotional eater. I eat too much. Or I keep eating even though I know I'm full. And so what I am quick to tell them is that being overweight is a symptom. Now, it may be a problem in that it could cause things like high blood pressure or increased risk for heart attack and other things. But the point is, being overweight is a state, is a symptom of certain behavioral tendencies, usually eating too much, not exercising enough. But overeating, the behavior, is also a symptom. Now, that is a problem because it can create obesity. But overeating is itself a symptom, in most cases, of an emotion. When people are stress eaters or emotional eaters and they eat too much, or maybe they're full but they go back 2 hours later to the kitchen to have more food that they really don't need, they're responding to a feeling of some form of discomfort. And that discomfort is the emotion that drives the behavior to eat. The eating gives them temporary pleasure or distracts them from discomfort. And so in the short term, that was successful. Problem is, it doesn't really change anything at the root level. So the next day, they're at it again. So we would then say, okay, well, then I guess my stress or my anger, my loneliness, my anxiety, whatever the emotion is that's causing the eating, that's the real problem, isn't it? No, that's also a symptom. So what is it that causes the stress, the anxiety, or the loneliness, or the anger, or the sadness? What is it? A thought. Your thoughts, your beliefs, your memories, the pictures you make in your head, those things that you think, mostly at the unconscious or subconscious level, those are the things that create emotion. And so if we have a belief that is disempowering us, like I'm not safe, or I can't trust people, or I'm never going to be able to get over the death of my relative, or I'll never love that way again, those thoughts, those beliefs create fear, and they create sadness, and they create anger, and all those different feelings are symptoms. So whenever you look at your challenge or what you think of as your problem, realize that whatever you think is your problem is probably a symptom. And as long as you just try to deal with the overeating or the anxiety, and you're not dealing with the underlying thought pattern, you're probably going to be unsuccessful, or it's going to take a long time. So if you want the shortest path to resolving the issue in your life, trace it from symptom all the way down to the actual underlying cause. I want to close with one analogy or metaphor that I know you're going to remember. If you think about a garden that's become overrun with weeds, how do you get rid of those weeds? You have a lot of different possible ways of doing it. One would be to analyze those weeds. You could look at the way they're growing. You could study them. You could begin to speculate on where they're going to grow if we don't change anything. Now, for some people, that's like talk therapy when they're doing that for months and months or years, simply analyzing their symptom. You still have a weed, though. Now, in other cases, you might spray weed killer on that weed. Now, it might actually kill the weed or stunt its growth, but it might also poison the rest of the garden. And that's an analogy for using, in some cases, toxic or highly addictive pharmaceuticals to address an issue. Now, some people would say, well, let's just use positive thinking and tell ourselves, the weeds are gone, the weeds are gone. But when you open your eyes, you realize the weeds are still there. And lastly, we have willpower-based behavior modification. This, in the case of being overweight, would be dieting. Or with quitting smoking, it would be cold turkey and trying to force yourself to avoid those triggers. Well, that's like stomping up and down on the weeds. Or in some cases, even trimming them. Now, in all of these cases, what are you left with? You're left with a bundle of roots at the bottom. You may not see them because they're below the surface of the ground. But as long as the roots are there, the weed will continue to grow. And so as a hypnotist, my whole drive when I'm working with clients to resolve issues as quickly and effectively as possible is to notice the symptom and trace it back to the actual root. The root problem must be addressed. When you pull the weed up by the roots, the problem and all of its symptoms go away. So think about your issues, ask yourself, what causes that? What causes that? What causes that? Until you found the way of thinking, maybe related to a past experience, but something you're thinking is creating all of this. And once you do that, then you're halfway to resolving it.